there is a specific question that the high achieving woman is asking herself this July that she wasn't asking herself in January. Why am I stuck at the altitude that I am stuck at? She's been executing since February. She has been faithful. She has been consistent. She has been hitting her goals. She has done all the work. But guess what? That ceiling still hasn't moved. She's been telling herself that she needs to try harder, work smarter, focus more. But none of those things are precise. The ceiling she feels over herself has a name. That ceiling started before she was even born. She's been carrying this ceiling her whole life without even knowing that she was carrying something. Welcome back to the Shift Conversation. My name is Oluseye Ashiru and this is episode 7 of the SHIFT9. 9 episodes, 9 fractures, the full diagnostic map of what is structurally limiting the high achieving woman in her leadership. If this is your first time joining me here is a short frame. Every episode we have names of fractures that we are naming. It's not a flaw, not a problem to fix, but it is a structural gap that has been quietly producing costs in the life of a high achieving woman. And once we are able to name those things, we can then close them. So far, we've covered 6 episodes: identity, purpose, capacity, rhythm, community, and marriage. Each one of those fractures has been forming inside a high achieving woman in her own lifetime. Today's episode is going to be different. Today, we're going to be naming the first fracture in this series that predates the high achieving woman, and that is called the generational fracture. And the woman that carries it, the woman I'm speaking directly to today, I'm going to call her the inheritor. There is something specific about naming this fracture in this month of July, because now we're 6 months into 2026. This high achieving woman has been building since January. She's been executing her plans. And this mid-year moment has now arrived when she has seen the accumulated results of 6 months. And it's now harder for her to ignore those things now. The mid-year is where this fracture becomes even more visible because the woman doing the work has produced enough evidence over 6 months that this ceiling is not about her efforts. It's about something that is older, bigger than her own effort. And that is what we are naming here today in this episode. If you've ever caught yourself saying, I've always been like this, but deep down you know, quietly within yourself, that this is not actually you. This is not how you want to be. I want you to stay with me because this episode is really for you. What makes this fracture different is that every fracture we've named so far in this series has been forming inside the life of the high achieving woman. The identity fracture is a version of that woman's life that she's been performing. The purpose fracture is the assignment that she has been executing that doesn't really belong to her. The marriage fracture is the marriage she's been managing rather than inhabiting. Each of those is something she's been building over the years out of her own choices in response to her own conditions. But this generational fracture is not built by her. It was already running when she arrived on the scene. It is the inheritance that she didn't choose herself. The pattern that was in her family before her. The wound that was passed forward without anybody naming it. The rhythm that has been running silently for 3 generations, and now she's in the 3rd generation. She's not the one who built that fracture. but she's the one who has been carrying it. And this is a completely different structural position than every other fracture we've named in this series so far. The generational fracture is a structural gap between the woman she was designed to be and the patterns that she inherited before she had any choice in the matter. Not the gap between her and her family. Many of the women that I have worked with and I'm describing here love their families. They honor them. They visit them. They are not in conflict with their family members. The gap between her design and the inheritance that her design is currently running underneath is what we are talking about today. She's carrying things that she didn't choose. Some of these things are gifts, faith, resilience, a particular capacity for hard work, a certain kind of loyalty. Some of these are wounds, however, a pattern of over-responsibility, a rhythm of scarcity, a silence around specific topics that we don't talk about, a way of holding tension in her body. Both of these things are inheritance. She can name the gifts, but the wounds she's been calling her personality. We're going to be examining the 4 signature markers of the generational fracture. Every fracture in the Shift into Legacy diagnostic framework has 4 signature markers, 4 ways it's showing up in the life of the woman who carries it. I want you to listen for the ones that register as I start to list them as your own. Don't argue with the ones that resonate with you. The first marker, she has been calling the inheritance her personality. She would describe the pattern as who she is. I've always been the one who worries about everybody. I've always struggled to receive. I've always been the strong one. I've always been careful with money. I've always kept things private. The word always is the marker, because always is not a personality. Always is inheritance. Always is inherited. Personality has variation. It shifts across seasons, across relationships, across contexts. But inheritance runs steady. It shows up in the same way in every room. It travels with her wherever she goes. If a pattern has been running consistently steady in her life since she can remember, it means she didn't develop it. She inherited it. And that's the first marker. The word always will be the tell. Marker 2. She recognizes the pattern in someone in her family. Marker 2, if she looks carefully, she can find the same pattern in her mother, her grandmother, her father, her aunt. That over-responsibility that she has been carrying since she was 9 years old, she can see that her mother also had it at 9. The way she cannot rest until every single task is done, she saw her grandmother do the same thing. The silence around specific topics in her home. Now, she sees that same silence ran in her mother's home. She has watched it in her family her whole life. It's only that she has not been able to name it as the same thing she's been carrying. Because we have been trained to look at our families and see them as separate people, making separate choices. We haven't been trained to look at our families and see that pattern running underneath the same people. And so that's marker 2. When she stops looking at her family members and starts looking at the patterns running through her family, then she's able to find herself in it. Marker 3. The pattern is intensifying at specific stages of her life. The generational fracture is not evenly distributed across her life, meaning it goes quiet in some seasons and it gets louder in other seasons. It gets loud when she reaches the age where her mother was when that pattern first landed hardest. It gets loud when she becomes a mother herself. It gets loud when she reaches the level her family did not reach. It gets loud when she's about to enter a room that the family has not previously entered. The inheritance activates at thresholds. It is quiet when she's doing what her family has always done. It is loudest when she's about to do something the family has never done. And that is why so many high-achieving women hit their heaviest resistance right before their biggest expansions. That resistance that they feel is not fear. That resistance is the inheritance activating slowly. That is marker 3. The fracture gets loudest at thresholds. Marker 4. She's been managing it, not closing it. The high achieving woman does not ignore the pattern because she's too aware to ignore it. But she's been managing it. She's read the books, done the therapy, she's journaled, she's prayed about it, she's done the healing work. She's developed a sophisticated system for keeping that pattern from taking her down. But management is not the same thing as closure. Management means that the pattern is still running. She's only learned to build a life on top of it that hides how much energy she's spending to keep the pattern managed. Closure means that there is an end to that pattern because it stops. And that's different from managing it well. Most of the women that I've worked with have been managing this generational fracture for years. Some of them have been managing it so well that they don't even realize how much of their capacity is going into managing the fracture. The fracture overhead is real. And it's been running underneath everything that this woman does. That is marker 4. She's been managing the inheritance. She has not been closing it. And so those are the 4 markers of this generational fracture. She's been calling the inheritance her personality. She's been able to find the pattern in her family if she looks closely enough. The pattern is intensifying at thresholds. She's been managing it and not closing it. If those landed for you, stay with me because now we're going to be moving into the 5 examination questions of this fracture area. Let's go into the 5 examination questions of the generational fracture. Every episode in this series, we end with the same 5 questions. Show me, cost me, protect me, serve me, limit me. These are the diagnostic instrument of every fracture. I want you to come back to them with a notebook because these are not questions you get to answer in your head. These are questions you get to write down, sit with, and let them do their work. Question 1, show me. Where does the generational fracture show up in her life? Show me the phrase she says about herself that always starts with, I've always. Show me the pattern she's been calling her personality that she can also find in her mother. Show me the response she has to money, to conflict, to receiving that is the same as her grandmother's response. Show me the way she carries her body. That is the same way her mother carries her body. Show me the silences in her home now that are the same silences that run her family's home. Show me the inheritance. That's the first question. Where is this pattern currently running in your own life? Question 2, cost me. What has this fracture been costing her? An identity that has been shaped by an inheritance that she didn't get to choose and never even got to decide whether to accept them. Years of energy spent managing a pattern instead of closing that pattern. Decisions that she had made that were not really hers. They were the family pattern making that decision through her. Rooms she didn't enter because the family had not previously entered them. And the inheritance has been holding her at that same altitude that her family got to. A version of her assignment that is being throttled by this inheritance that was never about her assignment. Remember, we say this all the time. Vague costs produce vague healing. Precise costs produce precise closure. Make her name what the inheritance has been actually costing her. In her choices, in the rooms, in years, in the version of herself she has not even met yet. That is question 2. Question 3, protect me. This is the question where we always linger. We slow down here because it's an important question. What has this fracture been protecting this woman from? Because here is the thing about this pattern that is generational. It is definitely doing something for her. Even the wounds are doing something. They've been protecting her from the risk of being the one who breaks the pattern in her family. And then discovering what her family thinks of her when she breaks that pattern. It's been protecting her from the risk of getting to the room her family has not entered yet, and having to walk into that room without carrying her family along. It's been protecting her from the risk of being different from the women that she came from, and what that difference means about how she loves her family. The generational fracture has been protecting this woman from the loneliness of being the one who ends this pattern in her family. Closing it means being the one who ends it. So, you don't have to answer this one out loud. You just need to stop pretending that you don't know what the answer is. And that's question 3. Question 4, serve me. What has this fracture been serving in you? Belonging. That is the honest answer. The pattern has been serving her belonging to the family, to the lineage, to the women who came before her. As long as she's carrying what they carried, she's one of them. As long as she is limited the way they were limited, she is safe inside the inheritance of her family. The pattern is her belonging. And closing the fracture will require this woman to renegotiate what belonging means. Belonging without carrying the wound. Belonging without being limited the way they were limited. Belonging as the one who is different. That is a kind of different belonging than the one that the family has always offered her. That is question 4. What has the pattern been building in you that closing it will require you to release? Question 5. Limit me. Where is this fracture currently capping you? This woman cannot enter a room the family has not entered without inheritance activating at full volume. She can't build out a skill the family has not built without the pattern rising to slow her down. She cannot receive at a level the family has not received without the fracture insisting that she should not. She cannot become who she was designed to be while carrying an inheritance that was designed for someone else's life. That ceiling has a name. For the inheritor, the ceiling is the altitude that the family reached. Until that ceiling closes, the next level is unreachable for her. It's not because she's not capable, but it's because the inheritance is stronger than her strategy. That is question 5. And I want you to start to think of this mid-year reckoning. The mid-year moment is why you're here now. And that is why this episode is landing in your ears in July, not January. The reason the generational fracture becomes more visible at mid-year is because 6 months of your own work has produced enough evidence to show you that your work alone cannot move this thing. In January, you could still believe, well, it's a strategy problem. But by July, you have executed enough strategy to know that it cannot be a strategy problem. You are looking at your year at the halfway point and you're asking yourself, why has this ceiling not moved? If you drill down into that question and follow it all the way down, you will see that that cannot land on your effort. It would, however, land on your inheritance. This fracture is the reason you're stuck at the altitude you're stuck with. Not your strategy, not your discipline, not your capacity. It is the altitude that your family reached. What has been asking you quietly to go past that altitude? This fracture does not close because this woman goes to therapy. Of course, therapy can help. I'm a therapist myself. Many of the women in this work are in it. It is good work. It is not by itself structural closure. This generational fracture closes when she names the inheritance as inheritance, not as a personality. It closes when she stops managing the pattern and starts to close it. It closes when she becomes the one in her lineage who says, this must end with me. The high-achieving woman was designed to build, and she was designed to build past the altitude that the family reached. If this episode landed for you, you can't stop here. You need to at least take the next step of taking the free fracture point self-audit at shiftintolegacy.com/audit. It will help you to locate which of the 9 fractures is currently producing the largest cost in your life. That is your entry point. And if you go to our website at shiftintolegacy.com, you'll see all of our programs and resources that are available to you. And we are here to support you to closing the gap that you see in your life. You can access our full diagnostic ecosystem when you visit our website at shiftintolegacy.com. Next week on the Shift Conversation, we are in episode 8 of the SHIFT9, the leadership fracture. The media reckoning that we started off today continues in that episode. Until then, name what you can see, count what you can name, and close what you can count. This is Oluseye Ashiru, and this was the Shift Conversation, and I will see you in the next episode.